Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. If I can get a little bit of forgiveness on that metaphor, Dr. Anna, those of us who don't menstruate may have a little bit of catching up to do here. So can you walk us through just the very basics of what's going on the chemical side of things as we're having this conversation?
Okay, so let's see if I remember my sort of basic biology class. I have a PhD in biology, but you tend to forget fast. Also, I want to say I don't menstruate either because I've actually removed all of that from my from my body. But the whole principle of it is basically that you have a buildup of a lot of tissue in the uterus, basically that would make it very warm and comfy for an egg to a fertilized egg to implant, basically. And at the end of the cycle you bleed this out, so you have a fluctuations of four main hormones during the cycle, and some of them make you feel grumpy and a little bit sad and maybe a little bit more vulnerable, and other makes you a little bit more horny. So it varies a lot for women
An
throughout the
eclectic
cycle.
blend.
Yes. Yeah, so that's basically the short summary of it. Other than that, Google it and read up on it because I think it's kind of important to know.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go ahead and mention that there are already links in the show notes to this episode where we go into a little bit more of the specifics of all this. But I think it's important to acknowledge with a little bit of scientific understanding and a little bit less of this like cultural uncomfortableness, just the impact that we know these types of massive hormone swings can have on our mood and on our, I guess, just our general somatic experience. Can you describe anything about the particulars of what we've seen demonstrate in laboratories about what these sorts of hormone swings can do to our mood?
I think we can take a look at what happens in just a normal kitchen. I don't think we have to go to the lab
Sure.
or your average bedroom. Um, well, there are a subgroup of women that I would like to highlight right now. And these are women who get so bad PMS, like premenstrual syndrome, where you get often like very irritable, you get hungry, you're much more pain sensitive. There's a lot of things like that going on in the body, and sometimes their mental state gets so affected that they actually need psychiatric help for it.
Hmm.
And so if you suffer from extreme PMS, I'm not talking about just the pain, but that you actually become literally a different type of person, like your personality changes completely. um, there is help to get, and you should absolutely contact your doctor and never have a medical doctor tell you it's completely normal and you should just go home and accept it. That
Hmm.
is like I think that that's just something that's very important about these topics, that when you really suffer from it and when your life actually has it's impacted by it, you are allowed to get help. You can demand help, right? It's like a broken bone or something like else that doesn't function like it should do in the body, that you can get help. And there are some medications as well, that you can get to help you out with that. And also the same with women who bleed a lot. There might be women who bleed so much they get anemic every month, or like people with endometriosis that can bleed 20 days out of 30. And a lot of women are just quiet about it and just bleed and are tired because of anemia, and they're in terrible, terrible, terrible pains, and often told it's painful to be a woman, so just shut your trap and go home,
Yeah.
basically. And don't accept that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just a short form of it. Just-
I
well,
definitely.
I got straight into it, right? Being like all angry and stuff.
No, I mean, I think that there is room for anger here. I feel like this is important because I hear you saying that if you're not satisfied, that if your care, if your basic sensation, if your experience of this is too painful, too miserable, then something's wrong, that this is something that you can receive treatment, that you can receive care for.
Yeah.
I'm wondering for anybody in the audience who is maybe anxious or hesitant to be assertive or forceful with a doctor that doesn't necessarily know how to listen or how to take them seriously. are there any signs or symptoms or any specifics that folks might be on the lookout for to know that, hey, yeah, this is definitely something your doctor should be taking more seriously and paying attention to you on?
I think one important thing is just to basically state that it is affecting your life negatively in a way that goes beyond normal. It's not a good idea to go to the doctor and say, well, I have really bad PMS and I cramp a lot, because they will not react to those statements. I was diagnosed with endometriosis after almost 10, 15 years of pain and continuous visits to doctors that basically just said, oh, go home. So I know exactly what this feels like. And for a lot of these really kind of serious chronic illnesses for women, it's an average time for diagnosis between 8 and 10 years often, because women are not taken seriously and women's pain is not taken seriously. And also women don't express themselves in a good way. Sometimes they always like, yeah, no, it's not so bad, I have a PMS and it's not, no, say like, I'm in pain, I don't want to live like this, I need help, what can you do to help me? Could it potentially be endometriosis? And maybe check out the kind of illnesses it could potentially be, and just list them up, because that forces them basically to check them up and be a little bit more attentive to you, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my advice.
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics on endometriosis and endometriosis and these different things. But when we're talking about, quote unquote, regular old PMS,
Mm.
what actually works in seeking relief? I know we see a lot of, flash ads and different banners and different bullshit about what should be useful. But is there anything that you can tell us about the science of seeking relief in these situations?
Yeah, so well, I don't really know what kind of commercials you get in the US, because these kind of like medicine commercials are banned here. So so
Yeah, we can
we don't get
advertise
exposed to
that
that.
anything is
So,
medicine
so,
here. It's
so
fine.
but yeah, so I think one thing is just basically I think the tip number one, I would say, is basically to dial down the expectations of what you want to do during the times where you're gonna have PMS. Like
Mm,
for example, if you know there's gonna be 3 days a month that you're gonna feel like shit, you're gonna pick fights, and you're gonna like deal with criticism really poorly, maybe don't plan in that super important work meeting in those days if you can prevent it.
mm,
Maybe don't like start a massive new project with somebody, and maybe not like plan to do this like massive major things during that time. And of course that cannot be prevented all the time, life
sure.
happens, but if you can switch around a little bit, then maybe that would be a good thing to do.
I think
Then
it's
as I was saying.
worthwhile I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to
Mm,
really highlight that. Like, I don't want to create this world where we're telling folks who menstruate that they can't function or that they can't participate during a certain period in their cycle or whatever else. But I do want to really highlight and
mm,
echo this idea that we get to listen to our bodies, that there's
yeah,
value in paying attention to those things and being willing to, I guess, respond or react to our body's own desires.
yeah, and then also the fact is that it's maybe 3 days out of an entire bloody month. Ha, pun intended. But it's you might actually have almost superhuman powers right before your ovulation. Some people are in pain then as well, but you know it varies. I am super productive certain times of the month, probably a lot more productive, yeah, than the average person. But then I suck a little bit in 3 days of the month, which is kind of fine because it averages out pretty cool. But would if I'm forced to continuously force myself through a lot of pain and force myself through a lot, then of course my long-term production goes down, because I don't listen to my body.
Mm,
And then another thing is just try to eat well, like as healthy as you can, and take ibuprofen. It's just like just some some anti-inflammatory painkillers or whatever painkiller that works for you if you have like stomach problems or whatnot. You know, we all know like what kind of painkillers that works well for us. Stay away from the opioids. Nobody needs that for period pains.
Yeah, is there are there any I know there's so much kind of bullshit folk wisdom and things like that. Are there any healthy or unhealthy habits that you feel like are valid and worth considering here?
Yeah, I think of course, like just taking care of yourself and not stressing and trying to sleep when you can. And yeah, I think a lot of people like heating pads on the stomach to just relax the cramps a bit. It doesn't work for me at all, but I know it works for some people. Some people use
Works for
this
some.
yeah, some use these tense devices that basically have some sort of electricity into to the muscles in order to relax them. Doesn't work for me. It works for some. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. What you should never do is start doing some sort of vaginal douching or whatever it's called. This is like completely crazy thing that I think is much more common in the US than here. Because it really upsets the sort of vaginal flora, and it just is just not good. We're pretty like it's a pretty cool self-cleaning system. So and you shouldn't mess with that.
So we can everybody listening can go ahead and throw out like their summer's eve and all of these like different products marketed to make sure that your vagina has a nice fresh scent or anything
Yeah.
along those lines. Is that fair or is that too far?
I think that's pretty fair. I saw some like abominable product that basically like you shoved up some glitter up your vagina, and then it was like just like there was like glitter coming out. So I'm like, okay, this is just so fucking weird. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yes.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay,
Fuck
it's
yeah.
so fucking weird, and it's probably not very good to have a lot of like little plastic particles stuck up your vagina. Vajayjay, that's how
Hey.
we say it in the US, right?
Some people will bedazzle anything if you give them the opportunity. It doesn't mean you
Yeah.
should, but you know.
No.
So let me ask you, going off script a little bit here. I'm not sure if you mentioned diet yet. Is there anything that a person can do when they're on their period or having PMS symptoms as far as diet goes?
I think there's a lot, but I think you need to like check what works with you for you. I know there's this anti-inflammatory diet out there that basically just to me looks like just sensible eating. Just eat your vegetables, eat your like full grain foods, and you know, reduce your meat consumption a bit, but don't stop eating meat maybe. I think just eat reasonably well, healthy, and you know, the plate model. But I think there's a lot of people get very bloated. That's a very common like PMS symptom as well, that you get very, very bloated stomach. You feel like your pants are like sitting like 2 sizes too tight around the stomach. And this is also like one of the things with endometriosis, that this can happen throughout the month and not just during PMS. But so some foods, if you're like super sensitive to certain foods, you're probably going to react much more stronger. Like for example, if you eat like onion soup with garlic bread, you're probably going to have like a bit of a thing.
It's gonna be a bad time, is what
It's
you're
gonna
saying.
be, yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Cool. Any other pro tips that you have as far as managing those symptoms before we move on to callers here?
Well, no, I think for me it's basically just like ibuprofen and rest and stress less. That's been like the key things for me over the years. But yeah.
You know, that stress is a big one. Like adding stress to any medical anything, you know, even if it's just a normal monthly occurrence, adding stress on top of that will always make it worse.
Yep.